Were you a fan of wrestling growing up?
Yeah, big time. Had a brother in wrestling. So when I was about 12 years old, he used to bring me to wrestling matches, and I used to watch him, and then I just would bring me to the dressing room, and I see the guys, and I wanted to be a part of this world, and ever since that age, I wanted to get in there.
Where did you exactly grow up?
Quebec City.
Quebec. And who was your brother?
Michel Martel, who passed away, in fact, after a wrestling match in Puerto Rico, Ponce, Puerto Rico, in 1978, June 30th.
Was there anyone that you liked watching back then?
I was a big fan, of course, of Jack Briscoe. Jack was my idol, and I used to watch him, and similarly, watch every movie made, and I respected him a lot in the ring and outside the ring, and he was my hero at the time.
How did you wind up in the business?
Okay, it kind of by accident, sure. A summer, it was June '73. I just finished, school was the beginning of June, and all of a sudden I get a call from my brothers in Nova Scotia, in the Maritimes, and a wrestler got injured, and they were looking for replacement, real quick, So my brother told the promoter, well, he says, my young brother wrestles, and I wrestle professionally. He said, yeah, but I wrestled amateur, Greco-Roman style, but I never wrestled professionally. So he calls me up, and it's on a Friday afternoon. He says, look, tomorrow get on the plane, you come in here and everything. And I said, oh man, I was all nervous. I couldn't speak any English, and yeah, you're going to wrestle, professionally. Yeah, well, I never did it, and so he says, no, get on there, and back then in that territory, the kayfabe was really, really strict. The heels were one side. If you were caught talking to, heel babyface were caught somewhere talking, they'd be fired, both of them. And my brother was a heel, and I was going there as a babyface, so I was like left alone. All these guys that I didn't know.
Yeah. Who was the promoter back then?
Rudy K. Leo Burke and Rudy K. Bobby K. The Beast. So I got on the plane and went there, and my career started. So I wrestled, for like the summer vacation, from school. So now it's back to go, it's time to go back to school. And so I went back home, and I remember that, I went to school one day, and man, these guys talking, and I could, I had a great time. I don't mean in the ring, but also outside the ring, So I said, oh man, I got to go back. I said, I know I'm not going to finish the year. So I went that morning back to school, and then I went to see the principal, and I said, look, I'm finished. And he says, what? It's been only a day. I said, well, I'm going back to wrestling. I know I'm not going to finish. So I was 17 years old at the time, and that was it.
What do you remember about spending time on the road with your brother?
My brother, he was like my best friend, my mentor, everything. He molded me. Starting at 12 years old. And he gave me because my real name is Richard Vigneault, and because that name was hard to be pronounced, because he went to English territories, and the name, they used to pronounce the name Vigneault, and so he says, look, we'll wrestle as Martel. Martel is he's French, and he says you'll be Ricky, and oh yeah, great. So that was a dream, and so when I first started and then traveled with him, it was fantastic, and in fact, when I first started, my second week in the business, I wrestled against him all that week, and I used to rib him, because I was like 17. I was in really good shape, trim, and man, I was like lean and mean, and my brother was kind of stocky, and So I used to rib him, outside, at home, and now I used to rib him a little bit because, he had a little gut on him, and he was kind of stocky. So he used to blow me up, and
Right.
he says, who's in shape now, now, Michel, don't do that, and I was like, so I used to go back in the dressing room and puke, every night, I was so nervous, and he'd make me go, God, why? Then he'd tell me, hey, the one's watching, you better go, and, I'm like this, and so that was fun, and he had a great sense of humor, and he is really a good guy to be on the road with.
What are your memories of your first match?
Yeah, my first match was a guy against, he is called the Serge Bone, a guy from Montreal, and luckily, this guy could speak a little French, so that was fantastic. And plus, the territory at that time, J.J. Dillon was the top heel that summer, and they were doing fantastic business. So it was full, and the crowd was the reaction was fantastic. And I remember going in the ring, and every move, people were going, oh, really, had a great reaction. And then they gave me the finish, give the guy 3 drop kicks and cover him. And then I raised my hand, the guy, oh man, I fell in love with it, and then the second week I got such good reaction that the promoter took me under his wing, Rudy K. Then after the second week, he used to come to the ring with me, saying I was his protege and all that, and right away he put me in the limelight, and I loved it, and that was great.
Going back to your brother, how much did you learn about the business from him?
Everything, I remember him, I was like 14 and 15, at night, in the kitchen, and just going through the words, because as I said, I couldn't speak a word of English. So he's saying, okay, kayfabe means this, and, and the stooge means this, and he, and I remember him saying things like, hey, if anybody calls you stooge, just beat the hell out of them, and fight in this, and, he had principles and stuff, and he taught me everything,
How did you wind up in New Zealand?
New Zealand, I met Mark Lewin in Atlanta in 1976, and I traveled with him a little bit, nothing particular. We didn't, it wasn't like a friendship or anything. And all of a sudden, I went home in the fall of '76, and I get a phone call from him saying, asking me if I was interested in going to New Zealand in early '77. And I said, oh yeah, that'd be great, good experience. And as soon as I said yes, about a week later, I got a call from another promoter from Australia, Larry O'Day. And then this guy asked me, since I was in New Zealand, if I minded working for him in January, for a couple of months before I went to New Zealand. And I said yes. And then I started in Australia, and then I went to Australia and then did really well. So what they ended up doing is that I would wrestle in New Zealand during the week, and then Australia during the weekend. And I teamed up with Larry O'Day, and we got the title together. And I did really well in Australia, and then New Zealand was fantastic.
Watch thousands of exclusive shoot interviews right now on TitleMatchNetwork.com.